Okay, we're in section 25. This is quadratic equations, a continuation of what we were doing last time. Now we're developing a technique called completing the square. So we covered this material, we covered what perfect squares are, and how to complete um, um, the square. And that's for the binomials that we went through. So we did examples of that technique of completing the square, and we outlined what that procedure was, and then we went through a set of problems. Hopefully that material has been studied and you understood the problems that we presented to you. We'll go through it again, of course, by doing the homework, but the hope is at this point that you've studied it on your own and you're capable of doing the homework on your own. When I say the homework that's embedded in the notes. After you do that, then you do the web assignment. So I'm going to switch the screens and I'm going to go to the whiteboard. Second here. And let me see what I got here. All right. Okay, you should be seeing my whiteboard now. The material I'm going to go through is, again, I'll write the section number down for you. You should have the notes in front of you, though. We're in section 25 of the notes. And we're doing the homework. All right, problem number 1. It says solve by completing the square. So I'll write the problem down. It's x squared plus 8x minus 9 equals 0. So we're trying to learn completing the square. Completing the square, what we're going to do is, first thing I'm going to do is going to isolate that constant by adding 9 to both sides. And certainly I'm going to point this out to you. It's nice to have a coefficient of 1 in the square term, and we do. This coefficient here is 1. It's nice if this number, the coefficient on the linear term, is even, because then we can divide it by 2. Really simple. It becomes 4, and then we're going to square that. All right, so again, divide 8 by 2, you get 4. Square the 4, you get 16. So we're going to add 16 to both sides now. Now, by doing that, what we've accomplished was we completed this guy's square. He's now a perfect square. And what's that perfect square going to be? X plus 4 squared. What do you get on the other side? Well, 9 plus 16 is 25. Now, what are you going to do? Use the square root rule that we learned in the last section. X plus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 25. X plus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 25 is 5. X equals, subtract 4 from both sides, minus 4 plus or minus 5. Well, since I can do the arithmetic, I'm going to do it. So minus 4 plus 5 is 1, or minus 4 minus 5 is minus 9. I'm going to recommend you look at the answer key to make sure you're staring at those answers, x equals 1 or x equals minus 9. That's certainly listed. You can also check that if you like. One way to check is just plug the numbers in. You could have also solved that problem by factoring. It's actually easier to do by factoring than putting a square. Putting a square is something you need to learn, though. Let's go to number 2. And what's number 2? Again, solve by completing square. We're trying to, master that material by completing a square. Again, first step, isolate the constant by adding 1 to both sides. The coefficient on the square term is 1. That's good news. Makes it easier for me to complete the square. And the coefficient on the linear term, x, is 2, which is even. Divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 1 squared is just simply 1. Let's get 1 to both sides. What do you hear? A perfect square on the left side, x plus 1 squared. On the right side, you get 2. Now I'm going to use the square root rule. X plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 2. Now I don't know the square root of 2. So what do you do now? Subtract 1 from both sides. And what do you get? Minus 1 plus or minus root 2. This is a fine answer, but I'm still going to write down what the two answers are. X equals minus 1 plus root 2 or x equals -1 minus root 2. Okay, so again, I recommend you look at the answer key to make sure you're staring at that. And what are you staring at? X equals -1 plus or minus root 2. All right, let's look at number 3. I want to emphasize again, if this is going too quickly for you, you may not have done what we've asked you to do, which is study and do the homework on your own. All right, you want to take a chance to do that. Of course, you can come back at the end of the week and watch these videos if you like. I'll put number 3 down. And number 3 is x squared equals 7 minus 2x. Well, again, the goal is to isolate the constant. We're going to complete the square. How do I do that? Add 2x to both sides. And you get this. What am I going to do now? Complete the square. Again, the coefficient on the square term is 1, which is really nice because it makes it so easy to complete the square. The coefficient on the linear term, x, is 2. What do I do there? Well, I take half of 2, which is 1, and square it. That would be 1, and add 1 to both sides. By doing that, I've completed the square, and I made the left side a perfect square. We get the right side, 8. What do you get now? X plus 1 equals, I'm using the square root rule, plus or minus the square root of 8. X plus 1 equals plus or minus, well, I hope you remember the square root of 8 is really the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. So it's going to be 2 root 2's. And yes, you should simplify. I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. You get -1 plus or minus 2 root 2. This is a good answer. To me, it's a final answer. Some students like to write down both numbers, -1 plus 2 root 2, or x is -1 minus 2 root 2. Okay, look at the key. Mistakes happen. You want to make sure you're looking at the key. -1 plus or minus 2 root 2's. All right, let's do number 4. And again, relatively straightforward questions, by the way. They follow directly from what we've done in class. So you get x squared plus 14x equals 32. They want me to solve by completing the square. Well, it's in the proper form. I got the constant isolated. So what I'm going to do, well, the coefficient on the x squared term is 1. That's good news. And now the coefficient on the linear term, which is x, is 14. Half of that would be 7, and 7 squared would be 49. So what are you going to do? You're going to add 49 to both sides. Again, fair and equal treatment. Left side is a perfect square. It's x plus 7 squared. On the right side, what do you get? I guess you get 61, right? I say 61? Let's see. 49, 51, 81. I'm sorry. All right. What are you going to do now? Square root rule. X plus 7 equals plus or minus the square root of 81. Well, the square root of 81 is pretty simple. It's plus or minus 9. Let's keep going. I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides, plus or minus 9. Now, you know the other prior example, I just simply boxed it and called it a day. The reason that I couldn't do the arithmetic, but now I can. I'll write it down for you. X equals -7 plus 9, or x is equal to -7 minus 9. I can do that arithmetic. And what's -7 plus 9? 2. Or x equals, well, -7 minus 9, minus 16. Okay, let's look at the key. Make sure you're staring at those answers. And of course, I am. X is 2, or x is -16. Let's do number 5. And again, it says solve by completing the square. We see x squared equals 10x plus 39. Again, first step, isolate the constant. How do I do that? By subtracting 10x from both sides. What I'm going to do now? Well, the coefficient on the square term is 1. The coefficient on the linear term is an even number, -10. Take half of -10, which is 5, and square it, and add that number to both sides. So I'm going to add 25 to both sides. On the left side, we get a perfect square, and that's going to be x minus 5 squared. Let's see, I guess 64, right? Yep, 64. So what I'm going to do now, square root rule. X minus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 64. Let me keep going. X minus 5 equals plus or minus, well, the square root of 64 is 8. Add 5 to both sides, and you get 5 plus or minus 8. Again, in the past, I would have boxed that as an answer, but now I want to point out, I want to do the arithmetic because I can. So it's 5 plus 8, or it's going to be X is 5 minus 8. 5 plus 8 is 13, or X is 5 minus 8 is minus 3. Put a box in this. Again, look at the answer key to make sure you're staring at those two answers. And again, you are staring at those two. X is equal to 13, or X is equal to minus 3. All right, let's do number 6. If you need help, that goes beyond presenting to you in class time. Please come by during office hours. I'll be more than happy to help you with the material. All right, number 6, the last question. What do you see? X squared minus 14x plus 113 equals 0. Well, again, first step, isolate the constant. How do you do that? Subtract 113 from both sides. Now, what are you doing? Well, the coefficient of square term is 1, which makes it easy for me. The coefficient of linear term is minus 14. Half of that is minus 7. Square minus 7, you get 49. And you're going to add 49 to both sides now. All right, what do you get there? Perfect square. Completing the square, you made a perfect square. So it's going to be x minus 7. What do you get on the other side? Let's see, 51, 61, 64, minus 64. Put this over here. Okay, square root rule, x minus 7 equals plus or minus the square root of minus 64. X minus 7 equals plus or minus. Well, I do see the minus 1. That's going to be I. The root of that's minus 1 is I, and the square root of 64 is 8. So it's going to be 8I. What am I going to do now? I'm going to add 7 to both sides, and I get 7 plus or minus 8I. Put a box in that. If you want, you can write down what the arithmetic is. It's 7 plus 8I, or x is 7 minus 8I. Now, granted, that doesn't really say anything different than what's above it, but either answer is acceptable to me. Let me look at the key, though, and see if I did this. It says x equals 7 plus or minus 8I. All right, I'm going to switch over to the notes, back to the notes now, and just briefly talk about the Sage code. Again, that's optional. Certainly would like you to give it a try, though. So we're not related Sage code. And again, fairly simple. I'll just maybe go through it with you. Remember, click on this little reddish link over here. This is the Sage Math link. And by clicking there, if your computer's properly configured, it'll open up the sagemath.org website. Our recommendation is, as a low bar, is not to install a software, but just simply run the CoCalc, which is the web-based version of Sage. And when I do that over there, again, I want to claim it takes time to launch. You're using somebody else's computer resources. And in that case there, you really at the mercy of someone else. They're starting it up. I do want to create a new Sage worksheet. I'll click on the new button. And I want to create a Sage worksheet. All right, it's going to open it looks like a Word document when you click open that Sage worksheet. And I'm just going to type it in. So reset, remember shift return. We've been doing this some time now. X, we're defining a variable, and that variable we're defining to be X. All right, and we're going to solve. And what to solve? It's a command that's going to solve a quadratic equation now. It's x squared. Remember, the double equal signs is telling Sage it's an equation. 7 minus 2 star x, comma, we want to solve for x. Shift return. Right, it's working on it. I know that because I see that green thing going back and forth. And it certainly solves the equation for me. It says x equals minus 2 square root of 2 minus 1, and x equals 2 square root of 2 minus 1. I'm going to do next. I'm going to do a copy paste. This looks like a familiar question. By the way, the other one's also familiar, but this is in very recent memory. So I'm doing a copy paste. Remember, shift return. And I'm seeing something over there. I want to point out where that's coming from. It's the last problem we did, which is number 6. What's the answer? Well, it's 7 plus or minus 8i, exactly what they've got. You must say they read it a little funny. Not really. That's fine. It certainly read the same way. It's 7 plus or minus 8i. Okay, that covers that. Hopefully, you've mastered that material now. You might have to review that before you take an exam, though, but hopefully you've mastered the material at this point. Please do not use Sage for doing homework, though. Sage is getting your feet wet in coding. That's all we're doing, trying to get your feet wet. Hopefully, you're starting to think about, hey, maybe I can do this too. All right, thank you.